Hello everyone. This is Mark Spitzig, and I'm going to be running through my final project for the graphical application development class for Professor Fernandez. And so here we go. So if I start running it, pops up with basically two windows. We have our draw tools and our main window. Basically, it's a big canvas and some tools that sort of free float around that you can place anywhere. First things first, they're just going across. I have different tabs that all sort of do different things. We'll start off with the free draw. I guess I'll start there simply because it is the most straightforward. I have the cursor set to change when it's on the main canvas to a pen, which makes sense because you can sort of draw. So at this point you can draw. I have it set for rainbow draw. So rainbow draw will sort of create just random colors sort of as we are drawing. And if I actually go quick, you can see that the the colors are longer rather. Simply because the points, it connects 2 points with a colored line. There's a clear button that works literally with all of these down here. Right, these two buttons say the same, but there is a clear button. So we go ahead and clear that. I can't select the color until I uncheck the rainbow draw, so I'll go ahead and do that, and then we get AR available colors pops up. You can select an actual individual color if you know the code, or you just want to pick one in here. So let's say we'll pick that one, and then we can also change the size of the actual line that we draw. So make it a little thicker, and you can see it is thicker than before. You might have noticed this X on the end here. Actually, it's wherever I lift off. If I click once, it makes an X. That's this place marker, and that just shows you where your last point that you unclicked your mouse is. And that'll actually, we'll see that a little bit later why that's important. But I'm going to uncheck it for now, just so it free draw without worrying about anything. But you can do that. You change your oops, that was a little bit weird. Change your colors. We got a little happy face. Awesome. Cool. So that's sort of the free draw. Again, to pick a color, pick a thickness, and then, of course, there's the rainbow draw. The next one up is the shape. And basically, it draws a shape based on some criteria. And it does have the normal things like the color that I can choose as well, and the line thickness that I can choose. Both those will be sort of consistent throughout. But if I pick the angle is actually the angle that it begins with. And I'll just show you one at the beginning. I'll do the place marker too, because this is where the shape's going to begin. So I'll put it down here, and we see that the angle is 60 degrees, the line length, sorry, is 300, and the line change is 5, and I'll explain what all that means. But basically, if I click the draw, it ends up drawing this, and this is our hexagon shape. And that makes sense because our angle is basically every single time this changes, right, the line starts off at 300, so this is 300 units long, and then it'll change by 5. So this next line is no longer 300, right? It's going to be 295, right? And then it's going to be 290. So every time it goes down, that's why we don't get to the next part. It goes down by 5 every time. So basically, you can get 60, because I just divided 5 into 300, 60 a line. So I know how many lines there are. But basically, that's just the way that it all works out, and sort of spirals into the middle. And the 60-degree angle, like I said, it makes sense because it turns, sort of it continues on here, and this is our exterior angle of our triangle, or sorry, of our hexagon. So sort of these are my two angles, and this is 60 degrees in here, right? So if that's 60 degrees, it ends up turning 60 degrees, and we continue on. So that means our interior angle has to be 180 minus 60, or 120, which is the interior angle of a regular hexagon. So there's your geometry lesson. It's free for the day. Okay, so I clear that. Like I said, it works with everything. The cool part about all this is, one, I'm going to unplace that marker, so I'll start it over here this time. I can make any shape I want, just right here. I'll go ahead and make it, if I make it 120, well, that's a triangle. I could change it so it's, the starting length is a little bit more. And if I change the actual line change every time, if I make it 2, it'll be a lot closer together, our lines. And actually, in this case, it's so close together that you can't even see the difference because the thickness is up. But if I do the same one, and I make it slightly off, I'll make it go down a little bit. If I make it slightly off of this and make it, let's say, 119, oops, just under, and I draw, it ends up sort of making this cool twisted pattern, like spirograph style as we go. throughout. So you can make some pretty cool shapes. If I do one that's around 90 degrees, let's say I make it 91 degrees, and I put it over here, and let's make it a different color just for fun. Purple, sure. Didn't mean to draw that line, but there you go. Go ahead and draw that in. I did start it up here, right? So it does sort of do that same thing, and you can end up getting pretty cool shapes going on here. Let's just do one more. Again, they can sort of be really any angle. If you end up going below 0, it ends up sort of correcting it for you because you can't do that. But it'll allow you to pick pretty much any positive integer here. And even if it's above 360, it sort of just resets to 1. And if it's 361, for instance, it's the same as it would be 1 degree because it goes all the way around. And of course, this is in, I maybe didn't mention it, but it's in WPF, so everything is in degrees. Okay, so let's see what's another good one that we can try. If I just pick something different, let's just say I pick 80 degrees and start it down here, and we'll make our line a little thicker, and we draw it, and sort of it makes our pentagon looking shape, 2 pentagons sort of twisted, I guess, in there. And you can actually just change the color, change the thickness, and I can redraw right on top of that, and it sort of will look a little bit shaded maybe. I can actually change the thickness as we go, so if you see that the lines end up getting thinner as we go. I end up to get the delay to actually see the item draw. I ended up putting a threading in there, so it actually in a dispatcher. So every single time it'll actually be in its own thread and wait. So as it's drawing, you can do other stuff, but it'll end up sort of jumping to the newest thread every time. Okay, so again, you end up looking or getting some cool patterns in here. Okay, the next one is the tree tab. And the tree tab is very simple. It's got one button. There's really not too many options. What it does is it actually just, it creates a tree. And a tree is going to be sort of random every time. I mean, it's got its form. So let's say I make my tree starting right here. It ends up going, what it does actually, it's the way that it works is it basically picks a point. Okay, and then it picks a random direction, sort of using our sine or cosine. And the distance is going to be the same between these lines, but it basically picks a random direction within a constraint, and then it saves these 2 points, these new points, to to a list basically. Then from these 2 new points, it picks it splits it again. It picks 4 new points, 2 from each of these points, and it keeps on splitting. I think it does that 6 different times, and so you get something that sort of changes every time. If you I'll make it over here. If I do it once, and then I actually click it a couple times, it'll makes it a little bit thicker, and you get a more variety. So we'll end up having here. It doesn't put on the leaves or sort of all at once at the end there. Like I said, I click this 3 times, so it'll be drawing it 3 times. Get a little fuller, and you end up with a nice sort of random different tree every time, which is kind of cool. Before we get into the next one, I'll just go ahead and show you that I can actually save whatever's on my canvas as a PNG. So you'll just hit this button. It'll go ahead and save it to the folder, and I'll show you some examples of what I've done before. The last thing is, let me clear this. The last thing is, it's called, I just made these little arrows, but I call it bounce. Basically what you're doing is you're starting at a point that you click, or the center point. You can make the center point over here, but let's just say I started up here. What it'll do is it'll actually, again, it's based on this sort of big starting angle, and instead of it going and sort of spiraling into a center, it'll go and it'll bounce off the edge of the screen and sort of keep on bouncing around for that many number of bounces. And of course, I can specify the color and the line thickness, or make it a little thicker. So let's just say I'm doing a start at 60 degrees. So instead of it going sort of and doing a spiral, it's going to bounce around. It should, like I said, start up there, and it sort of will just bounce around the screen, and it'll do it 200 times, and you can end up with some cool looking patterns if you stop it at certain points, keep on going. And that one's not all that interesting, but you could, I don't know, make a darker blue, make it a little heavier, change it to, I don't know, let's make it a little less. Let's go with I don't know, like 45 degrees, fine. And I'll start it in the center this time because I have that button. So it starts in the center, goes 45 degrees, and so we end up, it does make these squares, but you can get some cool layered patterns to sort of start with your as you build it up. You also can change the line thickness as it's going, which can generate some nice patterns effects as well. So let's clear this, and I'll start, and I'll just say, okay, you know what, let's bounce, but as we go, I'll just decrease the, actually that didn't work considering they're overlapping. Should have picked something different. That's all right. Let's go ahead and do like something not even. Let's do like a 55-degree angle. And we'll not start in the center. We'll start at someplace random. Cool. All right. So if I sort of start a little thickness, and you can end up sort of changing it as you go, so you end up with maybe a cool looking pattern because it starts off or ends in a different thickness. So you end up with a cool looking pattern. That might be a nice background. I'll go ahead and save that. Awesome. You could add in another color if you want. It will make a nice blue, and we'll start it maybe do the same pattern, but instead of starting here, I'll sort of start in the middle. And well, that's coral. Let's go with that's chocolate. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Dark orange, fine. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and start the bounce, and I'll actually make it thicker as we go. And, kind of covered up most of it, but that's okay. It can make some cool patterns as you go. And if you made it like all the way, like 90 degrees, it'll pretty much just make a line. But if I make it 89, it'll sort of bounce up and down. So we'll start up here, and it'll sort of bounce as we go, and sort of just then bounce its way back. And again, not crazy interesting, but still kind of cool. So all that are basically the 4 functions that you can do, and you can pretty much free draw it during any time. Or even if I'm on a different tab, I can I could draw a tree, but then I could not do that, but I could go ahead and draw on that tree as well. And if you notice, when I start drawing, it does sort of pause that, but that's okay. All right, so I think that is all. Let's look at some of the actual pictures that it saves. So we'll go back into the code, and let's go ahead and let's open it in the File Explorer. Okay, so I think I put it in where it's going to be. Save pictures. Okay, so there's a Save Pictures folder, and just here are some of the patterns that I've done and saved before. Some of them aren't particularly interesting, but I'll flip through them with this. But just to show you what it's sort of capable of, this stays on top. Okay, so just go through and sort of I use different colors here to make kind of a cool pattern. Just layered them, moved the cursor over a little bit every time, and made a new color. Here's a little forest happening. This was, I don't remember what it was, but just different patterns I ended up creating. That's kind of a cool one, and then you tack that one on there. Some random ones. That's actually the icon for the tree. I made the icon out of the program itself. There's some patterns. There's a nice background. Another tree. Orange and blue argyle happening. Went from thicker to thinner and made this pattern. That's not a bad one. Sort of you get some cool ones. Backgrounds with the other one. I sort of started off thicker and went thin, and then started off, or then did the opposite. Sort of made this shading effect. There's a tree on top of sort of a background. Okay, so and we'll eventually get to the one we just saved. There's some stars that you made with the other one. Forest sort of before the trees happen, then after the leaves happen. This is the one I just made, so it's saved in there. You can see that it's saved in there. It actually does the file name is draw lines. That's the name of the program. Not very creative, but that's okay. And then it actually picks the date for the day, so it's July 21st, 2014, and then it actually shows you the time and AM or PM. So essentially, every time you save it, you'll get a new picture. So it'll generate the new name every time to put it in that folder. So that is my program. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you liked it, had any questions about it. I'll be happy to share any of my quote-unquote expertise about this program. And again, thanks a lot.